Okay. So let's start lecture number 2 with respect to the enrolled agent part 3, study unit 1, which relates to the practice before the IRS. Now, we have already covered this very particular aspect as to it's the attorney, or that means lawyer over there in USA, who is having a membership in good standing from the highest court of the state, as well as several other District of Columbia and all. So we have already covered this aspect. Now, the point is, if we talk about attorney or if we talk about the CPA requirements to practice, they must file a written declaration for each party or parties he or she represents that he is qualified currently and he has been authorized to represent the party. Sounds nice, and it's really very important. Okay, now let's continue that previous example. Sudhir is has finally become an enrolled agent as well as CPA. So, if we talk about Sudhir being a CPA, so even after clearing CPA, you need to apply for a license after clearing 4 papers of CPA, and you can apply in any of the one of the states, because there are 50 states in United States of America. So, particularly, you have become a licensed CPA. So that means the first requirement is met with qualified currently. Second is he has been authorized to represent the party. For example, as of now, Sudhir is an EA as well as CPA over there. Or let's change the situation, the example little bit. Sudhir is a CPA only, because in the given situation we are considering the from the example of CPA. So whether Sudhir is a CPA or a lawyer over there in US, he needs to practice before the IRS. So for this very particular purpose, Sudhir needs to file, in the given example, Sudhir needs to file, being a CPA or an attorney, needs to file a written declaration. And when we talk about the written declaration, this is really, really important. As such, he is qualified. He is a qualified attorney or he is a qualified CPA. And at the same time, he has been authorized to represent the party. When we talk about authorization to represent the party, it means the client or the taxpayer whose case is being represented by you as an attorney or as a CPA, that person has given you authorization to represent him before the IRS department or its any of its officers or employees, right? This is what they are stating here. And at the same time, second thing is not be suspended and disbarred. So overall, 3 to 5 MCQs are straight away from this, this one. Point number 2. 3 to 4 MCQ, they, trap you over there. How? The point is they'll be framing a situation wherein, okay, he's a qualified CPA, he has been authorized by the client as well, but for the time being he's suspended or disbarred because of any past reason. Temporarily he has been suspended. Now tell me, in this very particular situation, if he's suspended or disbarred, whatever the scenario is, in both the circumstances, tell me, whether it is disbarred or whether it is suspended, both the circumstances, can that person, can Sudhir, being a certified public accountant or an attorney, practice before the IRS? So the answer is straight away big no. So 2 to 3 MCQ straight away in the examination from this point number 2 only. Sometimes 1 MCQ, right? Sorry. Let's proceed further. Enrolled agent practice rules. These we covered with respect to the attorney or a CPA. But when we talk about an enrolled agent, for which you are, as such, have enrolled and will be a licensed enrolled agent after clearing the 3 parts of enrolled agent, you will have to apply for a license with the IRS and you will become an enrolled agent. So what are the intricacies associated with this very particular aspect as to when can an enrolled agent, you are an enrolled agent now, when can an enrolled agent practice before the IRS? An enrolled agent is an individual. That means attorney and CPA are not covered here, because whatever the provisions we are going to study in the next 5 to 10 minutes, they are solely related to the enrolled agent only. So enrolled agent is an individual other than attorney or a CPA who is eligible. The point number one is eligible. Point number two is qualified. Point number three is certified as authorized to represent another in practice before the IRS. Another mean to say the taxpayer. Another, the word terminology other means taxpayer as such. So there are three conditions which are ought to be complied with: eligible, qualified, and certified. So an enrolled agent is an individual who is qualified, eligible, and certified. So from these three terminologies, just set aside this one to represent another in practice before the IRS. That is quite obvious. He'll be representing another person only, the taxpayer or some other person. These three terminologies, they are really very important. One MCQ for sure from this topic, number C and D collectively. One MCQ straight away for sure, 101%. So listen to me very carefully over here. So we have used the three terminologies over here: eligible, qualified, and certified. So that means if we talk about the eligibility, being an enrolled agent, first of all, you have already, cleared all the three examinations of enrolled agent. Only then you can file your license with the IRS body. That means you are qualified. And finally, after, even you should be certified. Certified is as in whatever the continuous professional education hours are concerned. So they are up to date. So that is particularly in respect of certified as authorized to represent another in practice. So three terminologies are supposed to be taken into consideration over here is that in the MCQ: eligible, qualified, and certified. But here is an important catch. Although the person gets certified from the IRS body, but he can never ever use the word certified before, as such, his name as such. I was to, okay, I'm a certified, enrolled agent. If you use this word, it is against the norms. However, from the theoretical perspective, you need to understand an enrolled agent is an individual who is eligible, qualified, and certified. That means he is completing, he's as such stands completing his continuous professional education hours as well, but he cannot use certified before the name. Then enrolled agent may not appear in a representative capacity on behalf of any taxpayer. Here is an important point. They have stipulated over here, but here is a condition as well. An enrolled agent may not appear in a representative capacity on behalf of the taxpayer until and unless he is recognized to practice before the IRS. And so that means second condition also needs to be fulfilled. Presents satisfactory identification. So that means whenever an enrolled agent need to practice before the IRS, so you need to understand he should be recognized. Now, what does this term recognized means? So let's cover this in point number 2 itself. Then we'll come back to the present satisfactory identification as well. First of all, let's cover the first condition, recognized. Recognition means it must be evidenced when the enrolled agent appears for the initial meeting in the first office of the IRS in which he or she represents the taxpayer. That means a confirmation sort of, right? A confirmation as in, in any kind of mail as such, any kind of, document which gives an undertaking, which shows an undertaking actually as to the client or the taxpayer has, given rights to that person to represent the taxpayer before the IRS. Maybe an email, maybe an official undertaking. This is what they're stipulating over here. So recognition must be evidenced when the enrolled agent appears for any kind of meeting, especially for the first initial meeting. Why is it mentioned over here for the initial meeting in the first office of the IRS? Because once you have introduced yourself with the IRS department officers or any of its employers, so they become well versed with you. It's not like that for the same issue, for the same concern, you need to produce the documents and evidences as to you are as such given recognition by the taxpayer or the client to represent him. The recognition is required in the first meeting itself, which can be evidenced mean to say, which can be supported by producing the documents, maybe an email, maybe an official letter undertaking. A person will be recognized to practice before the IRS if he or she meets the requirements set forth in circular number 230. And even in the last lecture, I gave you the emphasis on this very particular aspect. If it is feasible at your end, because that booklet is of approximately 43 pages, circular 230. Just go through it once. However, it is not as such compulsory, but I hereby gives you a recommendation to go through that 43 pages booklet for a brief understanding in your leisure or free time. So, under Circular 230, it is particularly mentioned an enrolled agent may represent a particular party upon filing a written declaration as to he has been qualified currently and he has been authorized to represent the party. The same thing prevails. Whatever we studied in CP or attorney, the same condition prevails here. Qualified currently and has been authorized to represent the party. So, what was so different over here, which was not covered in attorney or CPA? Why they didn't incorporate in the above topic CPA slash attorney slash enrolled agent? What's so different over here? Presents satisfactory identification, recognized to practice before the IRS. That is just the same what we have covered here in the point number A. But when we talk about presents satisfactory identification, that means only natural persons may be enrolled agent. Point to be taken into consideration. There may be CPA firms, there may be, as such, who can represent on their behalf, but you need to understand if we talk about the enrolled agents, so they have to be natural persons only. No firm, no entity as such can, represent any taxpayer before the IRS. So an enrolled agent individually in the natural person capacity has to represent the client before the IRS. Only the natural persons may be enrolled agents. And for this, even US citizenship is not required. You're not supposed to carry the citizenship of USA to, represent your client before the IRS. Even this enrollment is available to, but not required of attorneys and CPAs. They are automatically entitled to practice before the IRS. Another important catch. The moment you become a certified public accountant, the moment you become a lawyer or an attorney in United States of America, you immediately become eligible to practice before the IRS. However, if you are an enrolled agent, if you are eligible, qualified, and certified, you have to file a written declaration and you have to present the satisfactory identification as to you are a natural person. And even US citizenship is not required if you are outside US. That will purely serve the purpose. Let's proceed further with respect to the eligibility to become enrolled. Because here we use the word enrolled, right? So eligible individuals must meet certain requirements for enrollment. Whenever we use the terminology enrolled, because the profession itself implies enrolled agent. What does that mean? This terminology enrolled. So that means enrollment is precluded by conduct that justifies suspension or disbursement from practice because of any reason. If you have been temporarily suspended or disbarred, otherwise you cannot practice before the IRS. However, if you are not currently in suspension or disbarment, you have actually cleared all the examinations of IRS special enrollment exam, for which we are doing the preparation for the part 3 as of now. So you have to clear all the 3 parts and then you become enrolled. Now, what is the requirement which is associated with the experience? Experience requirements. Let's talk about experience requirements as well. Past service in the IRS and the technical experience are a basis for enrollment. Whatever experience you have in the past with the IRS body and the technical experience, so they serve as a base for the enrollment. What are the different factors which are considered as past service in the IRS? That means length of minimum 5 continuous years, scope and extent of employment, and the recommendation of the employing division's superior officer. So that means IRS experience. If you would like to, as such, practice before the IRS body to represent your clients as an individual over there. So you need to understand experience requirements need to be met along with the technical experience requirements. Because when we talk about the technical experience requirements, so that means you should have a thorough knowledge. And if you are having a 5 continuous years of experience, so that is actually, as such, serves as a base to become enrolled agent. But at the same time, past service in the IRS. When we talk about past service in the IRS, so that means previously you have worked with the IRS department. So whenever we talk about the experience, so 2 major things are there which are ought to be taken into consideration here. The first one is the past service with the IRS, and that too, and as well as the technical experience. And for this very particular purpose, so there are 2 factors which are ought to be taken into consideration. 5 continuous years of service if you would like to represent the client before the IRS. But again, it has got a very subjective intricacy with respect to the scope and extent of employment or the recommendation as such of the employing division superior officer. Now let's proceed further with respect to application to become enrolled. Obviously, when you need to practice before the IRS body, you need to file an application. So a properly executed application for enrollment is necessary. You have to lodge the application with the body, with the IRS. Now, let's talk about temporary recognition. If we talk about the temporary recognition as such to practice, it may be granted to an applicant in unusual circumstances. But the such kind of application must be regular on its face and properly executed. So that means it is properly all the columns are filled in and everything, every requirement is met with. So it does not constitute a finding of eligibility or enrollment. It may be withdrawn at any time. So what is the temporary recognition to practice? If we talk about the temporary recognition to practice, it is allowed in some cases. You can practice even in unusual circumstances, but it does not constitute a finding of eligibility or enrollment, and it may be withdrawn at any time. First, you need to understand what this temporary recognition is all about. What's the key idea which revolves around the same? That means whenever you are filing an application with the department, so first you are given the temporary recognition to practice even in unusual circumstances, because there is a as such standard timeline within which you will be granted, license to practice before the IRS. However, in some exceptional circumstances, you may be given recognition temporary on a temporary basis is if otherwise everything is in halt, but subject to condition, application form is duly executed, and it does not constitute a finding of eligibility or enrollment, but however it may be withdrawn at any time. So that means department can otherwise, because in the previous lecture we covered this thing, any other person authorized by the IRS, you remember, any other person authorized by the IRS, because what was the list which we covered over there? CPA, enrolled agent, attorneys, then retirement saving agents, then enrolled actuaries. Then in one of the point we covered any other person. So we are talking about that any other person over here. So properly executed application for the enrollment is necessary if you would like to become, if you would like to as such file or represent the client before the IRS in exceptional circumstances. So that means, so there is a special provision which has been incorporated in the internal revenue code of the IRS body. So that means it has vested some powers to give authority to anyone in exceptional circumstances who is not otherwise an enrolled agent, who is not otherwise a CPA, an attorney, an enrolled, an actuary, or a retirement plan agent, but still power is given to that person. But that is in unusual circumstances. So the consideration of the application may be conditioned on, you need to file additional information with the department, and you need to submit written written or oral examination under oath. So that means if you would like to be recognized as a person to practice before the IRS for this very particular purpose, you need to file an application with the department, as well as you need to file whatever additional information is asked by the department, and as well as at the same time submitting to written or oral examination under oath. You have to take an oath. Once you have submitted the additional information, everything is correct and all that, you have to take an oath, written or oral. Then an applicant may file a written appeal within 30 days after the receipt of the notice of denial. Now, it's not necessary in every circumstance. As such, you will be given an authority to practice before the IRS. The point to be taken into consideration here is that, my dear students, there might be a situation wherein denial is given with respect to the lodging of the application, because whenever you lodge your an application with the department, it is solely at the discretion of the department to give a positive affirmation or a negative one. Agrees? Right? So if the denial is given as such, if there has been a denial, so applicant may file a written appeal within 30 days after the receipt of such kind of denial. An applicant may file a written appeal if the denial is given by the, if you are denied the right to practice before the IRS on a temporary basis. So you have 30 days from that very particular day to appeal, and to appeal in a written manner. But let's say, take an instance this way, instead of denial, if the approval is given, so each approved applicant is then issued an enrollment card. Is given an issued an enrollment card. Then comes eligibility of non-form 1040 series. Prepares to represent the clients. Non-form 1040 series preparers. Who are these individuals? Non-form 1040 series preparers. First of all, you need to understand what does form 1040 relates to. 1040 form is basically for the individual tax return filing form, right? So here they are talking about the topic eligibility of non-form 1040 series preparers to represent clients. Non-form 1040 series preparers are those individuals who certify that they are those individuals who given who as such gives a certify that they do not prepare or assist in the preparation of any form 1040 series tax return or claim for refund except 1040 PR or 1040 SS for compensation. And the non-form 1040 series preparers may. So you must be astonishing, ma'am, what this provision is all about. The lecture was going great, but all of a sudden, what is this for? So my dear student, listen to me very carefully for the next 5 minutes. So the point here is that non-form 1040 series preparers. So it's a separate category. Non-form 1040 series preparers. So there are those individuals who gives a declaration, who certify that they do not prepare or assist in the preparation of any form 1040 series tax return or claim for refund. However, 1040 PR or 1040 SS, they are not included over here. But the main thing is they are not, as the name itself implies, non-form 1040, non-form 1040, name itself implies, they do not prepare or assist in the preparation of form 1040 individual returns, neither for claim or refund or tax filing at all. But whenever we talk about non-form 1040 series preparers, they may sign any tax return they prepare or assist in preparing. Sounds interesting? Let me just go back. All right. So they can say sign any tax return they prepare or assist in preparing. So that means you have to sign the tax return which you have prepared or you have given an assistance in preparing for it. But for compensation, obviously, you are rewarded for that. You are given the monetary benefit for that. In a nutshell, what this is all about. So that means if we talk about non-form 1040 series preparers, so they represent the taxpayer before the revenue agents, customer service representatives, or similar officers of the IRS, including the taxpayer advocate officer series during an examination. If the individual signed the tax return or claim for refund for the taxable year under examination. So they have not incorporated all officers here. Just give a keen concentration here. Revenue agents, customer service representatives, or similar officers and employees. Let me take you through that table, then we'll come back to this so that you have a better understanding what I'm talking about. Here is the table. So that means before IRS revenue agents, customer service and employees, not before anyone at the IRS. So that means these individuals, they might be having those individuals who have limited rights. Who have limited rights. And who have limited rights? Annual filing season program participants or others who are specifically allowed. So that means they will put you a trap in the actual examination. They will use the terminology non-form 1040 series and you will be landing up in a perplexed state of mind what this is all about. So quickly you need to correlate. Okay, so they are non-form 1040 series preparers to represent the client. So that means they are not filing any kind of, as such tax return. They're not claiming for, as such. They are those individuals who do not prepare or assist in preparation of form 1040 tax return or nor for claim for refund. So these individuals, they can only sign any tax return, only sign. So that means any person can as such sign the tax return for which they have assisted someone or prepared it. So the answer is yes, but the key point here is that they can represent the taxpayers only before the revenue agents, customer service representatives, or similar officers and employees of the IRS. So straight away they are talking about AFSPs and other officers or other individuals who are authorized for the same. They are talking about AFSPs, annual filing season program participants. Okay, so they are talking about over here annual filing season program participants or other individuals. Then here, whatever we have covered, so that is purely in context of AFSPs. Is it clear till now so far, so that we can cover other persons as well? So Suneet has raised an concern. Can non-form 1040 series prepare a file form 1040 PR and SS, and what are these? No. Form 1040 PR and form 1040 SS are excluded from this definition for the time being. It's a separate topic for which we'll be covering a comprehensive discussion. But as of now, let me answer your query. It is excluded over here. Except word is used. Except. So that means 1040 PR, they are not talking about 1040 PR. They are not talking about form 1040 SS. So they are only talking about form 1040. Okay. Now, then comes other category of persons who may practice before the IRS on a limited basis, for which we will be having a comprehensive discussion in our tomorrow's lecture. And for the next 22 days, without any halt as such, from Monday to Saturday. Monday to Saturday. So Sunday, I'll be updating you because I have another lecture already, committed. Monday to Saturday, full back-to-back classes. Okay. So that's all for this session today. And make sure you do the revision. If you have any doubt, you can ping me. And again, I would like to answer the query. I have answered it, but I would like to repeat it. They are not included in this. Non-form 1040 series, form 1040 PR and form 1040 SS is not included over here. Okay. So that's all for this session today. However, in the next lecture, we'll be, as such, starting with a quick recap of point number G, and then we'll start with H as well. Thank you and keep working hard.